But in Mexico, a similar piece of property in a gated community starts in the mid-300s.
Most Mexicans we know have a car and a house in Mexico that they have paid cash for with no debt. Not only is the cost of living in Mexico a lot lower than the U.S., but there are now growing employment opportunities in Mexico due to the booming gold and silver mining industry. The only Americans who will be able to survive and thrive in the U.S. will be those who immediately take their wealth and use it to purchase gold and silver. Americans who stop transacting in U.S. dollars and move their wealth to precious metals are effectively opting out of the Federal Reserve's criminal enterprise. NIA is now seeing signs that the U.S. government is fearful of Americans abandoning the U.S. dollar. The U.S. debt Ponzi scheme is about to be exposed, and in a last-ditch effort to keep the dollar bubble propped up, the U.S. government is beginning to take steps to force Americans to stay in the dollar. Hidden inside the recently passed Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act was a new law that had nothing to do with healthcare. Section 9006 of the healthcare bill requires that beginning January 1st, 2012, all businesses and self-employed individuals must report every purchase of goods and services over $600. This will mean that every time a company sells a 1-ounce gold coin or even a half-an-ounce gold coin, they will have to fill out a 1099 form and file it with the IRS. NIA believes that this new law is definitely one of the top signs that a U.S. societal collapse is right around the corner. Imagine the thousands of non-productive IRS employees that will have to be hired when this law goes into effect. Every precious metal dealer in the U.S. will have to hire more employees to comply with this unnecessary regulation, which means you will likely pay a higher premium to purchase gold and silver. In the years ahead, as we begin to see a massive outbreak of price inflation, $600 might not even be enough to purchase a loaf of bread. Imagine businesses being forced to file 1099s every time you buy food. In another disheartening sign of what could soon occur on a nationwide basis, the city of Philadelphia is now proposing a new law that will require the operators of pawn shops and precious metal businesses to snap a digital photo of each customer and to obtain both an electronic imprint of the client's left thumb and a copy of the client's state-issued photo ID. This info, along with pictures and descriptions of the item purchased, will be entered into their police department's Major Crimes Unit database. Once again, the government is using the concern of stolen property and money laundering by drug dealers to infringe on the privacy of honest Americans. NIA is also hearing reports from members across the country who recycle water bottles and soda cans at local recycling plants. Brand new rules now require them to give their ID to the recycling plant workers who enter their personal information into a computer database, including the exact items that were recycled before they pay them for their goods. They must also sign papers that allow the recycling plant to give this information to the local police and any other law enforcement authorities. The government is taking every step possible to put every American citizen under a microscope and closely track every single thing we do and every transaction we make. In Indiana, there is now a state law that no matter how old you look, you must provide and have your ID scanned to buy alcohol. NIA has confirmed that 2 separate and unrelated men in Indiana, after buying alcohol more than once at the same location, were sent emails inquiring about if they need help overcoming alcoholism. Indiana is also beginning to scan IDs for cigarettes. Before long, it's possible that the new healthcare bill will bankrupt all private health insurance providers and all Americans will be completely dependent on the government for healthcare. Imagine if when the time comes, the government knows you smoke 1.2 packs of cigarettes per day and they decide to deny you coverage for smoking-related diseases. NIA believes that what's going on in Indiana is just a test run for new federal regulations that will require a national ID to be scanned when purchasing any item, regardless of what it is. Have you noticed lately that if you spend cash at the supermarket, the cashier will look at you like you're crazy? Even businesses that were once considered strictly cash businesses are now discouraging the use of cash and logging every cash transaction. One NIA member recently went to a strip club and handed a $20 bill to a dancer. She refused to take it and told him that he would have to take it to the manager so that he could log it in a book for accounting purposes. Americans today have become dependent on unemployment checks, food stamps, and other government handouts that have not only guaranteed that we will soon experience hyperinflation, but they have the unintended consequence of making any future economic recovery absolutely impossible. Many Americans are no longer motivated to find work and become productive members of society. Some Americans are outright abusing the system that hard-working, productive Americans are forced to support. One NIA member owns the most popular bakery in the Georgetown neighborhood of Washington, D.C. A customer recently entered his store and asked for them to produce a custom-made birthday cake that looks exactly like her very high-end designer handbag. After saying that producing the cake would be no problem and that the price would be $150, the customer said that she would like to place the order and asked if the bakery would accept food stamps as payment. Instead of working as hard as possible to live the best lives as possible, most Americans are satisfied with their unemployment checks and food stamps. They spend their time worrying about the personal lives of others by watching reality shows, reading TMZ, and gossiping about their favorite musicians and sports heroes. This is reminiscent of how during the U.S. Great Depression, Americans became obsessed with going to the movies as it offered them a chance to escape the heat, the cold, and the loneliness of their bleak personal lives. With America's obsession with Hollywood now reaching epidemic proportions, it's a sure sign that a societal collapse will soon occur. NIA has direct knowledge of many Americans who are living in Section 8 housing while receiving unemployment checks and food stamps, but are making absolutely no attempt to find a job. Some of them have had offers to work for $15 to $20 per hour, but they turn these employment opportunities down out of fear that they may lose their housing, food, and other entitlements. The 40-year-old friend of one NIA member who was living off of government entitlements in California recently said that he will come out of retirement for $25 per hour. Anything less wouldn't be worth it. President Obama just signed a $26 billion bailout